I mean, wow. I mean, wow. St. Louis Blues defeat the Boston Bruins in overtime 3-2 in probably one of the most exciting games of the playoffs. That that game by St. Louis, this was a statement game from St. Louis, from how poorly they were outplayed on Monday in against Boston, how much Boston totally destroyed them on Monday, made an embarrassment of the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis came into this game and just made a statement saying, "You want to embarrass us? We can embarrass you. We can make you feel uncomfortable." And St. Louis, just that was a well-deserved win out of the St. Louis Blues. Play Gloria, St. Louis. Play Gloria the rest of the night because that was a well-deserved win. I I'm still shaking after that overtime because it was just that overtime was all St. Louis. Boston had no reason being in that overtime. St. Louis completely dominated them throughout that whole overtime period. It At the beginning of the game, it looking like it was going to be another typical Boston was going to dominate this game, but the St. Louis stuck by their game and they played through it. They played through it and they managed to make Boston completely uncomfortable. That was just amazing. It was an outstanding game by the St. Louis Blues. They picked up for Jordan Binghamton, who allowed a couple of weak goals in this game, and they came into this game and just, like I said, they made a statement. They made a statement saying, "We can play up to you. We can make you feel embarrassed. We can make you feel uncomfortable." And that's exactly what they did. And they take this series and they tie it 1-1 going back to St. Louis for the weekend. I'm just still absolutely shocked out of this entire game so far. And yeah, so let's go over this game. Let's see how the St. Louis Blues managed to completely just outmatch Boston in this game and make him feel uncomfortable. So early on in this game, in the first period, on a power play, it was, to me, it was sort of a weak call because one of the St. Louis players was driving towards the net. It was Sammy Baez, or I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think it's Sammy Baez. He was driving the net on a little breakaway, and he crashes into the net, and the refs call a penalty for goaltender interference. But that is a good hockey play, in my opinion. That is a play where a player is driving the net. He is driving the net to score, and he crashes into the goaltender. He has no intent on crashing into the goaltender, and he really has no intent to hit the goaltender. He just cannot stop himself because he is driving the net. That is a typical hockey play, but the refs decide to give him a 2-minute minor for goaltender interference, and Boston capitalizes on that power play as Charlie Coyle is open in the slot and he puts it right past Jordan Binghamton. It was kind of a weak goal because it went 5-hole, and Binghamton looked like he wasn't comfortable making that save, and it just squeaks right by him 5-hole, and he knew he let in a weak one. But yeah, so 1-0 Boston from there. Right now it looked like Boston was going to grab the momentum from the rest of the game, but St. Louis stood by it, especially their depth. They came to play this game after being absolutely destroyed the game on Monday. Where that game on Monday, it was just St. Louis's top line that was really doing so. And today's game, it was the entire St. Louis lineup that came to play. So, with especially players like Patrick Maroon, he had a really good game. He was getting under the skin of Boston. He was making them angry. He was making them frustrated. He was getting into the dirty areas. He was going after the goaltender. He was chipping a stick at Tuukka Rask when he made the saves. He was just getting under the skin of Boston. And on his line on the ice, Robert Bortuzzo just flings the puck towards the net. It deflects off of one of the Boston Bruins sticks and over the shoulder of Tuukka Rask to tie the game. But then, not even a minute later, Joachim Nordstrom, he gets a small little breakaway and he goes backhand 5-hole past Jordan Binghamton to make it a 2-1 Boston lead. But, like I said, after the first Boston goal, St. Louis did not collapse. They stood by this game. They came right back, and right near the end of the first period, at least with almost 5 minutes left, a 2-on-1 for Jaden Schwartz and Vladimir Tarasenko. Schwartz takes a shot off Tuukka Rask. The rebound goes right to Tarasenko. Another shot, gets a rebound, and then he buries his own rebound on the backhand to tie the game at 2. And From after that first period, it is tied 2-2, and it is tied throughout the rest of the game. This game is incredibly tight checking. It is St. Louis this time outchancing Boston. Like I said earlier, St. Louis was making Boston very, very uncomfortable this game. Boston just looked like they couldn't make any kind of play. St. Louis was making the first line uncomfortable to where they were making every line uncomfortable to where Boston had to swap pairings on their lines. They were just trying to get something going. They couldn't get anything going because St. Louis was just making them insanely uncomfortable. And it shows to go for the rest of the game as St. Louis almost doubles Boston in hits throughout this game. St. Louis has 50 hits, Boston has 31. That just shows to go you what St. Louis's game plan was coming into this game. Hit them, make them uncomfortable, get under their skin, play a gritty game. And that's what they did. And Boston did kind of get an advantage getting 5 power plays this game, but St. Louis's penalty kill was really good after allowing that first power play goal. St. Louis was taking away chances. They were getting the puck out, even though sometimes they struggled to get the puck out, but when they had a chance to get the puck out, they managed to do it. But then there was also sometimes where they would barely clear the puck and it would only go as far as the neutral zone. But they still managed to They still managed to kill most of those penalties off, which is a good thing. And surprisingly, St. Louis got some power plays in this game after getting so few in Game 1, even though they go 0-3. They were getting their chances on the power play. They were getting their looks. They just couldn't capitalize, especially on a double minor taken in the second period. Boston clipped one of the St. Louis players. He was bleeding from the chin, and St. Louis gets a 4-minute double minor off of that. But they couldn't capitalize. Boston's penalty kill, as we know, throughout through the entire playoffs, they have been very good. I think their streak coming into this game, they killed their last 25 out of their last 26 penalty kills, which is extremely good. That is, out of the get-go, we already know this Boston team is difficult to score when they're shorthanded. So, give credit to Boston. They killed every penalty off of St. Louis, but just like I said, throughout this game, St. Louis just brought it to Boston. They brought it to them. They made them feel uncomfortable. They were getting their scoring chances when they could. And Boston, from their dominance in Game 1, they just couldn't get any kind of scoring chances. Throughout between the middle half of the second period and the third period, they were barely getting any chances off Jordan Binnington. They were barely getting shots. I think going into the third period, Boston only had at least, 15 shots. As the shot totals after this game, 37 shots for St. Louis and 23 shots for Boston, which last game, I think that total was flipped because Boston really outmatched them on Monday. This game, like I said, St. Louis really outmatched them today. And it's really, at the end of the third period, it is really getting really exciting because both teams are getting chances on each side of the ice, really coming close to getting that game-winning goal late in the third period. But they can't put the puck in the net in the third period. I'm losing my words because I'm still shaking after that game because that overtime. I'll explain the overtime in a little bit because that overtime was just something special. But like I said, both teams at the end of the third period, they were both getting their chances and they couldn't bury it. So we're going into overtime. So it's usually with NHL overtimes in the playoffs, it's either the game-winning goal scored in overtime either happens really early, but if it doesn't happen early, it'll go on forever. That's the trend I usually see. And in this game, it ended early. Because right out of the get-go, St. Louis just completely dominated Boston throughout this entire overtime. Overtime lasted not even 4 minutes. St. Louis took the 3 minutes and 51 seconds that they needed in overtime to score the game-winning goal. It was the entire time the puck was in the Boston zone. Boston could not get a line change, and it was really hard for them because in this overtime, their bench was on the other side of the ice, so it was really difficult to get a line change even when they cleared the puck. Because even when they got a chance to get the puck out of the zone, St. Louis brought it right back to them. Brought it right back into the Boston zone, and they really made it difficult for Boston to get the puck out. They were getting into the dirty areas, they were hitting them, they were playing gritty, and they were just getting chances out the wazoo. And right before the game-winning overtime goal, St. Louis actually draws a penalty, which they get the extra man on the ice pulling off Binghamton. So it's a 6-on-5 right here. And St. Louis, they're just controlling the puck from here on out. You get Carl Gunnarsson at the point, playing pass, give and go with Vladimir Tarasenko. Tarasenko gives, not Tarasenko actually, it's Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly gives the puck to Gunnarsson, and they're playing back and forth. Lastly, one-timer from Gunnarsson, screened by Alex Pietrangelo, behind Tuukka Rask for a 3-2 St. Louis Blues victory in the overtime to tie this series at 1 game apiece. Going back into St. Louis for the weekend, and you can see the video live feed from St. Louis. They are going absolutely crazy. The arena is dark as they're watching it on the scoreboard that is lowered so everyone can see it. Everyone in that arena is going crazy. I bet you once they saw that game-winning goal, once the horn went off for St. Louis, they played Gloria to celebrate their victory, because Play Gloria has been their song since they shut the Flyers out in December when they were the last place team in the NHL. That has been their go-to song since that game against Philadelphia, because Play Gloria has a tie to South Philadelphia with the Mummers, because when the St. Louis Blues, they have connections with some people with the Mummers, and they were watching the Eagles game on a Sunday night, I think, and every touchdown the Eagles scored, the people of the Mummers, they kept playing the Gloria song, and it just stuck in the heads of those St. Louis Blues players. So after that game against the Philadelphia Flyers, they played Gloria in the locker room, and so far Play Gloria has been their victory song after every game, and they played after every win in the arena, they played in the locker room. It's basically their song this season, and I'm sure they're playing it right now as we speak in that locker room. They're playing it right now in the Scott Trade Center in St. Louis. So, really exciting game. Really exciting game. I'm speechless right now because that overtime was something else. So, what are your guys' thoughts on this game? What are you guys' thoughts on how St. Louis played? So, what are your guys' thoughts on what the rest of the series could possibly look like going into St. Louis over the weekend? So don't forget to drop a comment, don't forget to leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.